All right, artists, today we are going to talk about color mixing. We are going to start painting our self-portraits. We have to learn a little bit about color theory. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the color wheel and how we can use color to create emotion. Okay, we're going to talk about the color wheel. First, I want you guys to remember the three primary colors: yellow, cyan, magenta. We're going to use all three of those colors to create all the other colors on our color wheel. But we've been talking about emotion. We made marks that were emotional. We have created our self-portrait using expressions to create emotion. Now we're going to use color to create emotion. So I want you guys to start thinking about how you would use color. Use a color scheme. Come up with a color scheme. Like colors that are directly across from one another on the color wheel. Those are called complementary colors. They create the most contrast between one another. So if you want to create an emotion that would have a lot of contrast or be very powerful, I would use those complementary colors. We do not need to paint our faces realistically. So you could choose colors that are directly across from one another to create that kind of emotion. You could use what we call analogous colors. Those are colors that are close to each other on the color wheel. They get along or harmonize together very well. You could use colors just within a color family and create different values of that color. Again, that would harmonize very well. So think about those kinds of colors. Maybe you even want to do something called monochromatic, where you just take one or two colors and then you just add white to create different tints and shades of that color. So once you have decided what your color scheme is going to be, you will paint. All right, the supplies that we are going to need for this are your cup of water and paintbrushes. I like to have a variety of paintbrushes, a larger one for bigger areas, smaller flat one, and a rounded tip for detail. Remember, we want to keep our water pretty clean as we work. A rag. Rags are important to dry your paintbrush off. And your paint. Notice the three primaries plus white. This is how we're going to work. I like using an egg crate so that we can mix different colors in there. And you can share with a partner with the paint. So when we get started, you thought about the color scheme you wanted. And we're going to mix our colors right on our paper. So I like to start with the lighter value color first, which would be yellow. Take my paintbrush, get it wet first. I like to dry it on the rag. And I'm going to start. So the color scheme I have chosen is a yellow-green, and then I'll use the complements directly across, which would be a red-violet color, a blue-violet color. So I laid some yellow down. We're going to mix right on our paper. So I need to add a little cyan to this to make it my yellow-green. I want the paint to still be wet so that that cyan will blend in nicely with my yellow. And I'm just doing my color mixing right on my paper. That way my palette stays relatively clean. I'll get a little bit more yellow. I don't need a lot. Remember to dip the tip of your paintbrush. We don't need paint up into the danger zone. And also, you're holding your paintbrush in the middle of the wood handle. So as you work, you're mixing that color right on your paper. Think about value changes. Where would value changes happen on your face naturally? It would probably be a little darker here along my cheek and under my eye than my nose would be. So I'm going to paint carefully around the line of my nose so that my nose then can be a lighter value. So let's do the nose now. I want the bridge of my nose and my nose a lighter value of green. So I'm going to add white. So I dip in the white and then I'll just come down here. I've already got green on my brush enough that I'm hoping it'll mix in. And I'm just going to paint right over the little swirl that I drew, because after we're done painting, we're going to come back in and add some more detail with some oil pastels. Now here I just want to feather or blend out my white down here along my face, and as I do that you can see how the green from my paintbrush is coming off to create that darker value. And I'm just going to keep working. Maybe I want a little bit more yellow here, so I just go slow and blend those colors together. Now let me remind you, artists, if you work your paintbrush too hard and you push too much on the paper, what will happen to the paper? Very good, it will rip. So you have to be careful as you're laying down your paint. You don't want to overwork an area. If you get it too wet with paint or too wet with water, you will rip it. Here under my eye, I'm going to put a little bit more cyan just because I want to darken it. I really want to get the impression that my nose and my forehead are a little bit higher off away from my face and my cheek. So in order to do that, you darken that value creation. So now you guys have been working. You've gotten your face colors laid in. When you start doing the detail, I want you to use a smaller brush. You don't need a lot of paint. So I've got my skin all done. I've got some darker values where the planes of my face change layers so that I can see value change, and it creates and makes it look three-dimensional. Now I'm going to do my lips in that complementary color of the yellow-green, which would be a red-violet. So I'm going to take a little magenta, put it in my cup here. Also, notice how clean my palette is so far. I only have the one cup over there. My colors are not contaminated. And I'm going to mix my red-violet. I'm going to add a little bit of white to it because I want different values of the red-violet on my lips. I'm going to add a little bit more magenta. So I carefully mix the paint. Again, my paintbrush doesn't have paint all the way up into the danger zone. And then I will very carefully and slowly paint in the shapes of those lips. Your lips are also three-dimensional, and they will have highlights, they will have shadows as they move. So the top part of the lip might be lighter, and then it curves under, so it would be darker as it curves under towards the bottom lip. So I'll just put a little cyan along there and blend it together. You don't need a lot of paint, just a little bit of paint. Work the wet paint together. And then now I'm going to take some of the lighter value, because now as the bottom lip rolls out, the light catches that bottom lip and creates a highlight. You have to think of your lips are not flat, they're round. So now my lips are that complementary color of my skin. And maybe I want to use this color for my eye. My eyes do not have to be the color that they are. I might like to do my eyes the same color as my lips to create balance. The pupil will be black, and we can use black paint to paint that, or we could do that with the oil pastel. Well, artists, I hope you have fun painting your self-portraits, and you can choose to paint the hair or to leave the background marks that you made showing through, and maybe you just paint the background around the hair to frame your face. You're the artist, it's your choice. All right, have fun painting.